Hello everyone, welcome to Nate's Studio Desk, the place where you come to ask questions and get helpful advice. Today we're going to go over how to have an optimal workflow completing an architecture project in Rhino. At this point you may be starting to get used to some of the tools and getting comfortable with Rhino. But when to use groups, layers, sublayers, and blocks is of paramount importance to use the tool effectively. So this technique that I'm going to show you today is really going to be designed so that when you're far along in the project, it's really easy to go back and make changes and manipulations to your geometry. I really hope this tutorial will be helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to make more tutorials. Let's get into it. So first we're going to create our floors and our first floor and our walls. To do this, there's a number of options that you can go about it. I used to model everything with lines and model my floor plan and press in 1 foot here. And I used to model my floor plan completely in top view. Here you can use the trim tool to trim lines and then select all the lines and press join to join them all together. Then you bring them over into 3-dimensional mode and you can extrude the curve. Just type in extrude curve and then type in the dimension of the wall. Another technique that I have found really effective is using record history. So instead of spending all the time drawing the perfect floor plan and the lines, you can actually come here and just draw one line. For this, we'll approximate it around the length of this art studio here. And you can extrude that line, extrude curve, and then let's do 15 feet. Now press dupe border. What dupe border does is it creates the line work around the surface that you selected. Now you can come down here and press record history and then press extrude curve, and let's extrude it 1 foot. The reason why I like this so much is instead of manipulating the geometry, you can come here and manipulate the line work. This proves to be a much easier way to manipulate the poly surfaces rather than afterwards having to come here and you would typically press solid point on, select 2 curves and extrude. And then you also break your history with the object. Now, once I have this curve, I can come here and press rebuild. Make sure that delete input is checked. And here you can control how many points you want along that curve. Now I can come here and I'm actually going to jump over to front view. And when I change the curve, it changes the geometry. This is a really fast way to test out some ideas. Let's say I wanted to make these perpendicular. I could come in here and change the geometry how I like. This is a very quick way without having to press a bunch of points to test out some quick ideas and get a sense for how you want to construct this wall. I like working in the front view because I can set up guides, and it's generally easier to manipulate geometry in either the top view or the front view. So let's jump over to layers here. And I'm going to click new layers and I'm going to type in wall. And then I'm going to go new sublayer and I'm going to do main walls. If I have sublayers, I don't like to put geometry in this main layer. I only want to put geometry in the sublayer. it gets really confusing when you try to turn off the layer, and it doesn't give you that much control when you have a mix of geometry in a sublayer. So I always like to say, if you're going to have a main layer with multiple sublayers, never put geometry in this main layer. We can go here, do another sublayer. Maybe we could even call this, I'll just keep it main walls for right now. To move an object into the layer, you can come here to properties and hit wall, and then you see here main walls. Then we're going to make an additional layer titled guides. I might give this a fun color, maybe an orange, so no there. So this is the layer where, let's say I want to establish some type of rhythm. Let's go 2 feet. So I just type in 2 feet, and then maybe move this over 8 feet. Then I can select these 2 lines and type in array linear. Let's type in 10 at this point, and then there, and then we can use that to start to reference our geometry. So now you can start lining things up in a more precise way if you want to. So let's see. Select this line, move that down, move this over. Create a rectangle. After we select the curve, we need to make sure that we're in shaded mode for this to work. So we select the curve and press Ctrl T, which is trim, and then we select our surface. Press enter. Notice here this will break our history command. That is okay, because at any point we can come back and type in dupe border. So it broke our history, but we can always come here and type in extrude curve, make sure record history is on, and then type in 1 foot. Now once we have this set up, we can very easily change the openings how we like. We're going to break history, and we can also change the edges as well. So if I press Control Shift and select an edge, I can manipulate the opening. I can even bring it forward and get a really crazy wall happening. So very quickly we can manipulate different surfaces based off of pulling and pushing. I can Control Shift, select this, and you see how there's a ball here. If I select that ball, I can move it forward and manipulate the walls that way. There is a difference, you notice, between moving the shape and also extruding it. This is a technique that is really good if you want to really quickly see a specific design in three dimensions quickly. When we go back to our old wall, let's say we want to add a wall here. We can use the split face. This is also an additional way that we can add windows and doors as well. So split face. This makes it so we can split this geometry and do things like extrude out a wall. And again, I press Control Shift to extrude that out. So that's one way you can start to make a floor plan. Again, let's say I would have a wall coming off of here. I could, instead of doing the split face, I can come here, press Control Shift, extrude this out 1 foot. Now I know that this is 1 foot wide. I can select this and extrude that out, and it is 1 foot wide. Let's say I wanted to have this wall continue. I could press Control Shift and extrude this out. Let's come back to our window. If I did want to add some additional detail, let's do sweep 2 again, sweep 2. Let's say I did want to add a little detail to this window. I can come in here and I'll actually go into front view and I'll press offset. And let's do 2 inches, or let's do 3 inches. And I can select both these curves. And again, remember to hit record history, extrude curves, and only extrude this out about 2 inches. This is just to add some trim work detail, and you can always come back and instead of manipulating the poly surfaces, you are manipulating the curves, and you can do that really quickly and easily. There we go. That is how to create walls. So here I'm extruding the curve, and remembering to press record history, and then extruding it 1 foot, and then can manipulate the wall how I want. Come here, go into plan, make this long wall, extrude, snap to the top, select, do border, record history, extrude. It requires an additional step, and so there might be a lot of circumstances where you foresee that you don't need to do that, and that's fine too. But if you do take the time to make that additional step, it will save you. And even if you don't, you can always come back, record history, extrude 1 foot. You can always come back and hit extract surface, do border, and do it again. You can also use front view to draft curves and extrude those curves to create the wall. You can also press Control Shift, select a curve, and extrude that out too. That's completely valid. And then do border. And if you don't want to do border, you can also just press extrude surface. Extrude surface and extrude that 1 foot. So there's many options, and it's good to know all the different options and then be able to make a decision about what the best and fastest technique is. And also mix that with what type of accuracy you want. Sometimes you want to model really quickly and you're not too concerned with accuracy, and then you might use this push and pull thing more often, but you can still be pretty accurate in here. Press 1 foot. Again, I wouldn't be able to come back and manipulate it with a curve, but I could still trim the surface. I could still trim this poly surface. I can hit solid points on and make basic manipulations, or come in here and let's make a curve. Let's say if we wanted to make a window in here, come in here and make a window, and then let's say we wanted to give that window a chamfer. Come in here and change that geometry. Unfortunately, when you press cap, that's a way that you can close a surface. It closes it all the way. So you can always come back in here and dupe the border, press curve, and sweep 2. First rail, second rail. There we go. And oh, remember to join these. Now you can always click one of these points and move them. I selected this curve instead. And move them to get a fun geometry if you want. Or come out and extrude it out would be one option, or come out and move it out would be another option. All right, so we know how to manipulate the walls at this point. Again, I could select this and press rebuild and manipulate this wall, or do all the different manipulations we went through before. We have been working, and that's fine, on the guides layer. So I'm going to come up here, select all those walls, and come up to the property, to the object, and put it on our main walls. Now I'm going to work on a roof layer. New layer, roof. Whoops, caps lock. Roof. For this, I'm most likely not going to have sub-layers, so I'm just going to keep it on one group and not do a sub-layer. Let's do a fun curvy roof and make sure that the select is here. There's a couple ways we could go about this, but using the tools that we've already been using, we can do this pretty easily. So I'm going to make a curve, then offset that curve. Let's do 3 feet roof would probably be realistic. And we can come in here now. There's a couple ways we can manipulate this roof and create it. For this version, we're going to create it in the right view like we did and make the profile of the roof and then hit extrude. You do want to make sure that this is solid so that you don't need to worry about that. You can just extrude this out. I do want to use the record history. I'm going to go to the plan view. Sorry for jumping around the plan view to see where I want to start that. Maybe we're out there, extrude it. Go to the plan view and extrude it out like that. There we get a wall. I remembered that I actually wanted the roof to be in the other direction. So I'm going to come here, rotate it with shift, and then get it in the other direction. My idea for this was to make a roof that had this series of walls, a floating roof with a series of walls and floor planes. So later on I might come up in here and, for instance, select these points and bring them up so that they support the roof. That was one design idea I was considering. Rebuild. Let's do the same. Sometimes it does chamfer it, and you can just come up here and fix it like that. So that's basically, so that's the roof. It's on the roof layer. Okay, so we can come here. Now if we wanted trusses along this roof, we can press the roof, press contour, select the curve, first point, second point, contour along, group this, extrude curve, Let's do 3 inches. Don't really want, so let's hide this so we can put this all on one layer. And I will group these together and then move them. Whenever you have many objects, that's when I start to group them, when I want to be able to select one of them, and I'm going to control them all at the same time. There we go. You can always come back and change how you want to expose those trusses. Another thing you could do is turn this off, lower them down. Let's see how that's looking. That's why you could get some trusses pretty quickly. You can always come back to, let's say you just made that roof to generate the trusses, you could come back here and press extract surface. I'm going to copy that top surface, and then I'm actually going to hit offset surface and hit, let's make a 4-inch roof here, and then for right now you can hit this and turn that off. And that's another way you could get a bunch of, let's see how that is looking, and that's how you can get a series of trusses. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you is how and when to use blocks. I might use blocks if I had a series of lights throughout my project. So let's over here model a couple of lights. I can just make them balls for right now, and maybe we give it a container of some sort, extrude curve. Don't want to make this solid. Extrude curve solid, no. So here, let's set view. So, again, I always like to jump over to top view to get a better sense for it. So you can make some pretty complicated geometry here if you'd like. I can select the curve here and press planar surface, and let's copy and paste and have a couple of these. I didn't copy and paste everything. Copy paste, have a couple of these ginormous lights. Let's make them a lot smaller because they are way too big. Okay, this will be our lights throughout our project. Now I'm going to hit block. And create a base point. Now these are one block definition. Now the advantage of using blocks is you can place them throughout your project, and when you select them, it blocks out every other object, and you can come in here and manipulate the geometry. So we can place them here and move them up. Honestly, I don't use blocks very often. If you are going to use an animation tool like Bongo, which I have used, and we'll do a tutorial on that later on. That is a program that does like to receive the geometry with blocks. If you're coming from SketchUp world and you're really used to working in groups, this is also in dynamic components and things like that. This is another way that you can do that and set your geometry. The last thing I want to show you, which really reinforces the need and purpose for putting everything on its separate layer, instead of coming in here and pressing properties and going here and setting the material, I can come to my layer here and press set properties, and I can choose the color, the material, the line type when it comes to print. Here I can select the material. Let's say I wanted to create a wood. I would come here, do new material custom, click color, have a fun wood pattern, and give it a little transparency, press OK. And then I could have a wooden roof. That showed up very pixelated. So then you can come back here. Let's use a different material. Let's go to our wood textures and select a wood roof. Or let's say we wanted wood trusses, set properties, materials. Use that for wood. Give it a little transparency. And then come here and set our main roof properties to, let's give it a cool texture, a fun texture. Maybe some oh, I didn't use new material. You have to press new material, then come in here. Truss. No, set it to the wood texture. There we go. And you can adjust the repeatability, how it repeats, break this if it doesn't come up like you want it. So it's coming up in that direction. So let's just quickly fix that. Material. Rotation 90 degrees. We can adjust, keep adjusting that how we want it. And that's just a really quick way now, instead of selecting each material. And you could even think of some of your layers like that you would have it. Use a new material. Let's give this maybe a concrete. Color. Let's give this concrete. There we go. So that's it for now. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope this tutorial was helpful. Thank you. Have a good day.